What does Umigari hide from the player behind the scenes and under the water? Umigari is the second Unreal Engine game from the Japanese indie studio Chilla's art, but unlike their previous games, Umigari is a fishing game that trades a short and scary experience for a longer, more unsettling adventure. We'll look at the strange creatures you'll encounter, both human and fish, as well as explore every location to see what they may hide above and below the water. We'll also be breaking the game too, like launching our boat to the moon. As always, we'll go section by section in the order they're unlocked. After waking up on a peaceful island, a mysterious fish merchant encourages the player to hunt, collect, and sell fish to earn money. Additionally, the first of a series of objectives has you travel to a shrine, where a distraught girl begs for your help. She wants you to collect 3 tablet shards to open the door, which will help her get to some island to end the curse. She disappears, leaving behind a bell, which allows the player to reach the next area. When crossing the open sea between roped-off areas, a big monster called Umigari will chase and devour the player unless you ring the bells. First off, let's look at the title screen. Unlike Cursed Digicam, their first game developed in Unreal Engine 5, Chilla's art opted to have a more dynamic scene rather than a pre-rendered video. Toggling off the fog and looking around reveals that the scene is simply the boat placed on a large stretch of ocean with nothing else around aside from the skybox. Without any weird fish present, it's downright pleasant. As for the game proper, there is a lot to discuss before we even hop into the boat. The harpoon, your primary weapon and tool for most of the game, has some odd properties. When it hits a non-fish object, it'll very slowly fall towards the ground. While deployed, the harpoon will remain connected back to the player with a dynamic rope. It's a bit buggy, but it'll try to sell its ropeness by deforming around solid objects, usually at a harsh angle. This doesn't make retrieving the harpoon any harder, but it sure does look weird. It can be hard to visualize, but the harpoon does have a limit on how far away it can be from the player before it's automatically reeled in. When refueling the boat with the gas pump, a fuel line will attach to the boat. This has no limit, working even when the boat has sailed off without you. This isn't likely to happen during normal gameplay, as the boat has very limited physics. While driving, the boat can rotate left or right, but it'll never tilt or pitch up and down. The game is always adjusting its rotation, so even if you attempt to sail onto land, it'll remain perfectly upright. If we manually mess with its rotation, the game will rotate it back, causing it to get pushed across the water. This odd type of propulsion has seemingly no limit, so it's possible to pause time, rotate the boat as if it's ready to do a wheelie, then resume time to watch it rocket off into the distance. This will upset the Umigari quite a lot, causing her to chase down the boat even through the sky. Since her target is the boat, we can stay behind to watch her mid-air antics from afar. Turns out the giant sea monster is extremely long, with a kind of fishtail at the back and 8 pairs of legs sticking out from the bottom. Perhaps she doesn't actually swim, and instead just skedaddles across the seafloor. Near the front are 2 long arms that will hold the mask whenever the Umigari gets close enough to unmask and show off its humanoid teeth. As if this sight wasn't weird enough, as the monster follows the boat, when it gets perfectly upright, it will start seemingly teleporting, oscillating back and forth every frame to be positioned above and below the boat. After a set amount of time, as it is not based on distance, you will die and respawn, even if you're not on the boat. Anyway, let's start talking about the fish in this fishing game. They start quite normal. You'll find tuna and pufferfish in this first area, but mutated fish start appearing before long. For any non-boss fish, one hit with the harpoon is enough to hook them. When they're dropped onto the boat's deck, they become ragdolls that inherit some of the boat's momentum. This means that while going forward, back, or sideways, your valuable cargo should remain in place. This doesn't happen for vertical movement, so manipulating the ship up and down makes them go flying out. Speaking of, you can get a valuable flying fish from one of these wind turbines. Looking closer, you'll see that its wing fins are actually deformed human hands. Zooming into its large human eyes shows that this game actually has real-time reflections, though the objects are rendered at a very low resolution, and the water is missing. Turning around, you'll see an improvised parkour challenge I set up using copies of the wind turbine. The blades always have collision, likely because some swing low enough to hit and sort of damage the boat, removing fuel. Since the player character doesn't have any special programming for movement and conditioning for slopes, You can climb up the blades at a pretty steep angle. Jumping from blade to blade as they rotate around is also possible, just not very easy. If you ever miss a jump or get smacked by a turbine, falling into the water automatically respawns the player into the boat. Which begs the question, what if we sink our boat and then respawn there? Well, putting the boat underwater causes the player to get stuck repeatedly respawning, so we're stuck with a fate worse than death. On that topic, when the girl in the school uniform dives backwards into the water, her model falls down until simply disappearing. Since the player is meant to always be above the water, having models disappear while underwater is a common occurrence in this game. Moving on in the story, the second stop on the player's journey is the submerged school, which has a school of fish wearing school uniforms. 3 particular fish must be served up to the man on the roof, whose dialogue alludes to the nature of the aforementioned curse. Around the school there are a number of timid fish, which are wearing one of 4 school uniforms. These make a noise and dart away when the player looks towards them. While swimming, scared or not, fish can go through objects and terrain, which can be quite frustrating. Hiding in the water makes it easier to see that the timid fish don't disappear once spooked. They simply calm down and continue swimming after leaving the player's line of sight. There is also a giant tuna that patrols the outer edge of this patch of the ocean, requiring multiple hits to defeat. It has the body of a normal tuna, but huge humanoid teeth. I mean, just look at those chompers. With teeth that clean, I wonder what kind of toothpaste they use. In a lower floor of the school, beneath the water, there is an oarfish with long hair covering its face gliding back and forth. This one is uncatchable, meant to just be an unsettling sight. But another instance of this fish can be found later on. On the school's roof, opposite the human goldfish, is a fish with human legs. It cannot be caught, instead it jumps into the water when approached. It will also appear later on. As for the school itself, it's a simple model with 4 floors, most of which remains down below the seafloor. Aside from the schoolfish, it has little to nothing hidden in its rooms. That's more or less true for just about every building in this game. They're either set dressing or explorable with only the bare minimum amount of decorations. Aside from the seafloor, under the school are also a bunch of rocks that do have collision. Bringing them to the surface reveals that even while on land, so to speak, you can't really control the boat. It does, however, like rotating in place, which can be a bit of dizzying fun. The third destination is the Aquan Mall, which has 2 important landmarks. The first is a very small strip of road, upon which a truck driver offers a trade. The player retrieves the truck tires stolen by some mischievous fish, and in return gets a sonar sensor for the boat. This is needed over at the mall itself, where Anzo, in hopes of gaining the takoyaki guy's attention, has you eliminate an octopus. This is done through a short game of hide and seek, just with more harpoon throwing. Once the octopus is defeated, the guy angrily dives into the water and transforms into a shark before swimming away. The mall is also the first location where you can encounter a giant deformed fish with 3 eyes. It holds a tablet shard, but can only be killed by poking an eyeball at the mall, and then again in each of the next 2 areas. Let's take a look off camera at the mall now. Going back to the tiny parking lot, here's another view of the truck driver's journey. He really does just drive directly into the water, but moving the camera around reveals his short animation keeps looping, even after coming to a stop buried halfway into the ocean floor. As for the tire bandits, they are meant to be sunfish, but they have a person's face, human skin, 2 arms instead of fins, and fingers instead of wavy back fins. They make actual sunfishes look normal by comparison, which is really saying something. The same can be said of the flounders, which are mostly located laying on the seafloors around the mall's streetlights. The area also has some flying fish, which have deformed human hands instead of wing-like fins. As for the giant anglerfish, its razor-sharp teeth are realistic, but it's everything else that's wrong. It has 3 large eyes on its body, which serve as weak points. The first 2 times it's poked, it will dive underwater and disappear, but the body unloads before the eyes. This might be because they're coded as separate objects, so it can track which eye gets damaged to keep that one closed in subsequent encounters. Also, its pathing is predetermined, following an invisible track around the area. If we magically move it high into the air, it will slowly swim down, before smoothly returning to its route. It's weirdly majestic. If we explore the mall, peeking into some of the closed-off stores reveals some basic yet varying models. There's at least one shoe store, a room with empty shelves, a clothing store with entirely yellow display racks, and so on. The roof is also fully modeled, with some duplicated ductwork clipping into itself, despite being inaccessible and almost entirely out of view. Next up on our journey, though, is the dome. Before visiting the mysterious dome, there's a small apartment complex just waiting to be plundered. On the top floor is a tool for processing fish into bait, and all that stands in your way is a bunch of fish-faced people with glowing red eyes. With a bait maker in hand, a different, more friendly fish-faced fisherman requests a whopping 30 blobfish, rewarding yet another set of bells. After you've deposited enough fish into each of the other boats, it will immediately sail away. The boat has no collision, so it's impossible to ride on it, but the NPC driving it does, so you can have it push your own boat until it disappears after a set time. Aside from the blobfish, this area is home to some squid with painted human faces on their mantle. There are also catfish with bulging brown eyes and big noses on their foreheads. Next up, the train station has one of the more confusing combinations of locations. A floodlight for the boat must be retrieved from a Ferris wheel, which lets you hunt 3 one-eyed ghostfish over by the construction site to deliver them to a man in a laundromat. After going through a quick spin cycle, the man leaves behind a lever needed to turn on the train. Sure, why not? This is necessary because a scared, confused girl needs to reach the next train station. Leaving the boat behind, the train rumbles along the tracks before it gets grappled by an increasing number of black tentacles rising out of the water. These belong to a giant black creature called an umibozu, pulled from Japanese folklore, who rises up out of the ocean and attempts to consume the train whole. If you survive, the evidence at the train station reminds the girl of the truth. She ate her own sister and simply forgot. Classic mistake, like misplacing your keys. The reward is more bells. Breaking down this area in order, even though the Ferris wheel isn't meant to be ridden, the structure has collision for most of its parts. That means it's possible to climb up its support beams and reach the floodlights before the yellow-colored carriage reaches the ground. This doesn't save any time, but I'll never pass up a chance at parkour. Other than the ghostfish, this area has 2 other hybrid species, a hammer-eyed shark and a manta-faced ray. The previously seen fish with legs can also be found, but it's riding on the front of the boat that's sailing around erratically. In front of the construction site is a crane sticking up out of the water. It looks normal where it is, but raising it up reveals it's been scaled up, enough that our fishing boat can almost fit in its seat. Whoever runs this thing must be a big lad. Now for the train encounter. The black tentacles don't extend very far beneath water, but the same cannot be said about the umibozu's hands. They actually belong to a second, smaller version of the creature, placed down below the seafloor, which you can see on camera here. The giant head is not connected to the body. It does, however, remain loaded in underground at all times, which feels somewhat ominous. Moving on, the final tablet shard is being held by that previously mentioned shark, which is now much larger and hanging onto the side of a skyscraper in the ominous city. To get it down, the player must complete some short missions to earn pieces of a mortar cannon and launch a shell from atop a large glowing tower. Once the shark is defeated, the final tablet shard is obtained from the arms of its humanoid tongue. This opens the shrine back in the first area, activating a piercing blue light beam that guides the player to the final location, as well as a bell that gets installed on the boat. Breaking the city down now, aside from plenty of buildings, the city has quite a few billboards. Some are spoofs of real brands, like the Chilla's Coffee iced coffee billboard, meant to resemble the white and green aesthetic of Starbucks, which might have been chosen since their mascot is a siren. The yellow text translates to, "Drink and catch tons of fish." Others are real-life advertisements. A couple of them are for the movie adaptation of The Convenience Store, based on one of Chilla's Art's previous games. Crux Corporation is a toy and trinket vendor, which apparently sells Chilla's Art plushies and card cases. Some others belong to real brands that don't have any obvious connections to the developer, like this one for an online clothing store, a bookstore, and an anime. As for fish, there are 5 main species. The northwest quarter has mermaids with standard fish tails and human torsos, but female anglerfish for the heads. In the northeast are aggressive piranhas. Spread around are also jellyfish, with eyes connected to a human brain visible in their translucent bodies, meant to be used as bait. The southwest is home to a singular elusive oarfish. Its model is a bit different, but might very well be the same one seen at the school. Finally, in the southeast section are quite a few swordfish that speed around the block. Instead of a fin on their back, these kinda have a mohawk of hair. Now during the fight against the shark, it has a few set moves it'll do. For one, it'll dive underwater, and after a few moments, jump out of the player's boat. During this, its glowing humanoid tongue is vulnerable. If we hide the water and seafloor, we can see that the shark actually disappears entirely, only respawning in position just before its leaping attack animation plays. The other move has a rush towards the boat in a straight line, which is repeated a few times before going belly up and again revealing its weak point. Considering the aforementioned takoyaki guy transformed into a shark after diving into the water after his beloved octopus turned human, this shark's tongue person might just be that same girl. How tragic. Pushing forward, we draw near to the game's ending. At the back of the ominous city is the girl from the start of the game, who asks to be taken along to where the beam of light is going. The player must follow the light onto the open ocean while being chased by the Umiga. It's angrier than ever, with gangly arms reaching out of its cavernous maw. The bell can be rung just 3 times, which is barely enough to reach the safety of a flooded cavern. Within is the girl's father, a giant sentient whale. Apparently, he uses godlike powers to curse the world, turning fish into people and people into fish. This was done after seeing the cruelty inflicted by humans, but now he questions his actions. The girl begs the whale to undo the curse, while the fish merchant pops out of nowhere to advocate for maintaining the curse. Through a series of questions, the player decides the future of human and fish kind. If the curse is undone, then everything is returned to how it was, and a scene plays of a bunch of humans floating up towards the water's surface. If the curse is not undone, then it's instead modified to give once fish humans the power to think. This seems to make things better. The oceans are clear and sunny, fish and humans begin to coexist, and life continues on towards a strange but better future. Also, shoutouts to that fish with human legs. It has some real dance moves. Let's break this down now. Looking at the final location without the fog, it has a few scaled up instances of the same rocks with ropes that serve as fences around each explorable section of ocean. When the Umiga has its arms out while chasing the player, the unseen arms holding the mask are still present down below the water. There's not much to be seen in the cave, but we can still check it out with our camera. Something to note is that the fish merchant does pop into existence just before the camera pans to him. He's magic like that. What's more interesting are the 2 ending cutscenes, both of which were done in-engine. For the curse being undone, the camera is placed below the water and gradually moved deeper. Moving along with the camera are some bubbles. Zooming out, all the human forms are a large cloud of bodies positioned weirdly, some bigger than others. Since these are just meant to serve as silhouettes, there are a lot of copies of the same model. And as we take more time to explore this scene, we'll find that it's playing out in the ocean past the mysterious dome. Now, the other ending is more involved, but also occurs at various places around the map. The camera has a smaller field of view, which helps give things a more cinematic feel. Interestingly, there's a scene where a woman sits on a bed while holding a fish. The exterior is never shown during the cutscene, but checking outside confirms that this is happening in a maternity hospital, a named location that otherwise isn't used during the rest of the game. So it's neat to see this from an outside view. Otherwise, there's not a lot hiding off screen during this sequence. A few characters are T-posing, and some models pop in and out when far enough away, but that's about it. As the credits rolled, I did notice something though. Considering the minimalistic, efficient approach used in Chillazart's previous Unreal Engine game, a model stuck out to me in the mall area. In the credits, Chillazart attributes a single 3D model, specifically a free model used for the dome. The line, designed by FreePick under assets, seemed vague, so I checked it out. Apparently, FreePick allows for 2D image and 3D model generation using a number of different generative AI models like Sora, Nano Banana Pro, and more. To what extent AI generation was utilized for Umigari is unclear, but I thought it was worth mentioning. But with that, we've covered just about everything out of bounds and behind the scenes of Chillazart Umigari. I hope you enjoyed this seafaring adventure and hope to see you all very soon. Thanks for watching, and cheers!